So at the time of recording this video, we're about 12 hours away from the release of Entertainment by Waterparks, their sophomore album, and their follow-up to their debut album, Double Dare. Before that, they released a couple of EPs, but nothing to this extent of a full album. Now, I haven't been this anticipating an album for quite a while now. I can think of maybe 3 or 4 albums all time that I've anticipated as much as this one, and that would probably be Blurry Face by 21 Pilots, which came out in June, I think, of 2015. We've got Lord's Melodrama, which came out early 2017, and then I Prevail's Lifelines, which came out at the end of 2016. So these are probably the most anticipated albums that I've ever had. So I'm really looking forward to what we could be seeing in this new album released by Waterparks later today. My favorite songs would probably have to be 21 Questions, Stupid for You, and Dizzy. Those are definitely a good variety of the songs that you should check out. So if you've never heard of Waterparks before this and you want to check out some of their music, listen to those, because 21 Questions is more of an acoustic song. It ends up gradually increasing in beat and melody, and then it ends up kind of exploding towards the end. So that's a really good song. Stupid for You is, even in their music video, they kind of try to make fun of boy bands and how they're always talking about love and how they're always, you know, just like all the hearts and everything. So that's kind of what this song is about, how Austin, who's the lead singer, is kind of stupid for this girlfriend. You know, he's so in love with her and he's so infatuated by her that he's kind of just like going crazy. And even in their music video, they're kind of trying to make out like they're a boy band trying to act crazy for all these girls and everything, so that's pretty funny. And Dizzy is another cool song. It starts out kind of mellower and stuff, but then the chorus is a lot more upbeat, a lot more dramatic, and I think that's a really cool song. So the entire album of Double Dare was a really especially the more I've listened to it now, the more that I'm used to the songs. So it does take a little bit to get used to sometimes. I will admit that like a couple of the songs immediately clicked for me, and that's what really got me into the band, and that's what really made me stay listening to them and stick with it and look at some of their other discography. But then as I continued to listen to Double Dare, the more and more I listened to some of the songs that I wouldn't have before. And, you know, now I'm listening to the whole album back. Doesn't matter. I'm just listening to the whole album because I think almost all their songs on that album are really good. There's one song, I will say my least favorite song on the album probably has to be Take Her to the Moon. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, Take Her to the Moon. I don't know, it just kind of makes me cringe whenever I hear the first beginning. It doesn't sound like the chords really fit together, and the lyrics are kind of weird, and just something about the beginning doesn't really click with me. Kind of turns me off from the album a little bit. Those are really the only reasons I'd give it a 4 out of 5. You know, it's a really excellent album. I definitely check it out if you're still new to Waterparks. So now you guys know a little bit about Waterparks, a little bit about their history, and come back to you in a couple hours with the first take results and my complete thoughts on the album after that. So stick around. Got more for you coming in the actual album, Entertainment by Waterparks. Album review, album review, album review. First thing I want to talk about is some themes that I've noticed throughout the album that I think you guys will notice as well after you take a look at it. The first one is that there's clearly a relationship and a breakup and struggles throughout the relationship going on throughout the album that you hear in basically every single song. The second thing I've noticed throughout the album is that there's quite a few songs that mention hope or luck, themes that have to do with luck, so I think that's kind of interesting. They have a four-leaf clover, the number 1111, which is the first track from the album. You've got Heaven, you've got the number 7. The list goes on and on. We'll talk about that a little more later. Another thing that I've noticed that's been a theme throughout the album is deep voices and kind of like deep thoughts that you can hear in quite a few songs. It kind of has like a reminiscent feeling of Blurry Face from 21 Pilots, and I've noticed quite a few bands starting to do this. This overlay almost that there's the regular person singing and then there's this deep undertone voice that's singing the same thing that's kind of like the evil inside of you also speaking out at the same time. The last thing I want to talk about is the color purple. It shows up a lot. It doesn't necessarily show up within the album itself. Images in the album and colors are a very big theme throughout this album, and if you look at any of the merch bundles that you can get and a lot of the pieces of clothing and stuff like that, there's a lot of purple going on. Even Austin's hair is purple throughout this album cycle, I guess, which it was blue.
I must have caught you from the legend, the lucky number 7. I try to hide with my words, but you're just fighting.
Alright, so the first thing we're going to talk about is the opening track, 1111. Right there you get a symbol of a time that's supposedly a lucky time. It's the time that you're supposed to make a wish at night if you see a shooting star, etc., etc. So there's a lot of hope in this song. There's a lot of cheeky expressions and a lot of it's very poppy and exciting, and it's you clearly see there's a lot of happiness in this song. So some of the examples of luck that I noticed right away, and this is 1111, which we just talked about. The number 7, which most people regard as a lucky number. Heaven is another thing that's considered hopeful. You know, it's the promised land. You never think of sad things when you think of heaven. You always think of happiness and pride.
At least it's all about you. I think the bonds are done with fun.
The next song we get into after that is Blonde, which is the first single that was released in the album. I think that was released maybe September, October of 2017. I could be incorrect on that one. A heavier song. It's more rock. It's more heavier Waterparks. There's a lot of energy, and there's some like Double Dare themes that I've noticed throughout this song. So one of the lyrics I want to talk about throughout this song is called "Shake from the Fact She's My World Devastator." And that's kind of interesting because it kind of talks about how, like, you know, when you think of somebody's world devastator, you think of somebody who's bad, you think about somebody who's almost ruined your life or changed your life. So it's interesting to think if Austin's going for maybe an angrier tone in this song, because you can hear it throughout the beats and the synthesizers, and just it's a lot heavier. So you wonder if there's maybe an issue with this relationship, or there's just some problems going on, or maybe world devastator could mean it almost in a good way, that like she's changed his life and she's devastated the world that he was living in, but now the world that he's living in now is a lot better. Next song on the album is called Peach, Lobotomy. There's a lot of whistles, a lot of like cheeky, again, really poppy. It reminds me of, if any of you guys know Theory of a Deadman's RX Medicate, it has kind of the similar tones and stuff like that, where you've got a lot of whistles and somebody singing in the background and like quick beats and stuff below that, but it's not like there's a lot of things going on, which I think you'll notice from the beginning of Peach. One thing I forgot to mention before that's in 1111 as well as Peach is the deep voices, and I think that's something that we'll see throughout the album. In multiple different songs there's these deep voices, but in other songs there are not. Like, I don't really hear it in Blonde, so I think you can open that up to your own interpretation on what you think the deep voices mean and why you think they're only in certain songs and not others.
I really thought you were my four-leaf clover. I know I'm lonely, but I won't come over. I really thought you were my four-leaf.
Next song on this album is We Need to Talk, and one of my favorite lyrics is I really thought you were my four-leaf clover. Again, tying that into luck, and four-leaf clovers are always symbolic of luck. A couple things to know about this is that They actually have a 4-leaf clover, a couple of t-shirts on their website, and for merch bundles that are purple instead of green, so I think that's kind of interesting, because you always think of a 4-leaf clover as being green. There's pain, there's like vulnerability, that Austin still loves this girl, but he's just not sure anymore, and there's just a lot of mixed feelings and like mixed thoughts going on throughout this song. Next song we're getting into is Not Warriors, which is the 3rd single that was released on the album before the album came out. It kind of reminds me of Blink-182 and some of the beats and stuff. That could just be my thinking. There's also like, he wants her to feel the pain that he's going through, and he wants her to kind of sympathize with him, even though maybe they don't love each other the same way as they used to.
Light us up until we pop. I wanna burn bright till we're not. Let's keep each other safe from...
Next song is Lucky People, which was the 2nd single released from the album. It almost brings more hope into the situation again, like maybe things have gotten better in their relationship, or maybe this is like after they've broken up. There's themes in acoustic songs that they're never like angry and they're never violent or anything. You always think of acoustic as either being a love song, a love ballad, or maybe sorrow, like reminiscing, maybe even sadness, but you never think of them as being angry.
I just hope it's nicer where you are, 'cause I only wanna lift you up.
Well, then we get into one of my favorite tracks on the album called Rare. It's upbeat again, takes a little bit of a different twist from Lucky People. It's got a lot of Double Dare themes again. Again, you can clearly see throughout this song, Rare, that maybe the relationship is over, but now Austin's trying to be happy again, and he's like, I hope it's nicer where you are because I'm feeling a lot of pain, but I don't want you to feel the same pain. So the biggest twist we get in this album is Tantrum, which just from the title you can see that it's all in capitals, and the words tantrum, you think of anger right from there, and right from the beginning it's a very hard, heavy hitting sound. You can hear a lot of like heavy rock, heavy metal sounds into it. It's definitely their heaviest song on this album, possibly even one of their heaviest songs to date. You can hear the anger in his voice and what's going on, and he's kind of just like ranting about anger, and you wonder if this is still about the relationship or if this is about something else. And I think it could definitely be about the relationship, because that is a progressive theme that's going on throughout the album, very continuous, but it could be just a little bit of a shift that he really wanted to get off his chest as well.
I don't wanna be a crybaby. I don't wanna be a crybaby.
Then we get into the song Crybaby, which I've heard a lot of people talk about the similarities between this song and Melanie Martinez, Crybaby. They also mention Pity Party, which is one of the songs on the Crybaby album. Personally, just those are the only really things that I noticed have any similarities. I don't really think the melody or any of the tone or the lyrics themselves or anything like that really have to do with Melanie Martinez. I didn't really see it. You guys might see it a little bit more than I did, but I didn't really see anything that I noticed that sounded like, wow, this is too much like Melanie Martinez, or this kind of turns me off from the album because of the Melanie Martinez references, so I didn't really notice any of that.
You can call me on my phone, I'll write you. You won't ever have to sleep alone. You can call me.
The final track is called Sleep Alone, and one of the lyrics that threw out to me was, so you'll never have to sleep alone. One thing that I did want to get into and talk about a little bit is the color purple and how much this is protruding throughout the album and throughout the merchandise and everything, the atmosphere throughout this album. So the color purple is very important in this album, and I think it's something that we should take a deeper look into and then think about what maybe their thoughts were going into this, because purple is so significant in this album. You see the album cover, Austin's hair, you see the merch. Every single piece of merch they have throughout this album is purple. They mention purple a couple times throughout the album as well, so I think that's pretty important. If you Google purple and you look at like symbols and stuff, some of the things that I found were, first of all, it mixes blue, which may represent like stability and calmness, with red, which is very fierce and anger. And I think you can see that so much throughout this album, where at one moment it's really calm and it's really happy and stable, and the next moment going off the record, really crazy, you know, really heavy metal, heavy rock, anger, a lot of stuff like that. So purple is a mix of those two colors, which I think is a very good representation of this album already. The next thing we get into is royalty. Royalty is very important in the color purple. Older European times, royalty was the color of purple. If you see anybody in pictures and stuff from a few hundred years ago that was wearing purple, that's very important because it signifies royalty, and it was very expensive to make purple clothing because, get this, purple things in nature are rare. So think about this. Rare was one of the names of the songs on the album. Royals was the name of the song on the previous album, Double Dare. So they're already like, you can see them purposely combining like rare, purple. How many things in the nature do you see that are purple? It's very difficult to find purple things naturally, but purple in particular, there are so few items in nature that are purple. So I think that's kind of cool. So after thinking about it, doing a couple calculations, I stayed up from about midnight until 4 in the morning doing the math for this. I'm going to give this album a 92.765 out of 100. And I'll get to you why I chose that. So 92.74968 is why I chose specifically that number, because the lyrics are so nice. Tantrum is capitalized in the album. This only song is capitalized. Crybaby might deal with Melanie Martinez. Relationships, colors. But no album is perfect, so you can't give it a 100. Come on, you can't give it a 5 out of 5. You can't give it a 100% out of 100. It's impossible. It's impossible. So incredible. So nice.